Have you ever wondered what happens when a single soldier's innovation changes the entire course of a war? What if I told you that one Native American mechanic from Montana created a weapon modification so effective that military brass initially banned it, only to secretly adopt it later when they realized its devastating power? This is the untold story of how Charles Two Bears, a Blackfeet mechanic with gifted hands and traditional hunting knowledge, transformed standard-issue M1 Garand rifles into precision killing machines that gave American forces an unmatched advantage in the Pacific theater. Before you continue watching this incredible true story that's been kept from history books, take a moment to comment where you're watching from and subscribe to our channel. We need your support to keep bringing these hidden stories of American ingenuity and bravery to light. The story begins in early 1942, just months after Pearl Harbor, as American forces struggled to gain a foothold in the Pacific against a seemingly unstoppable Japanese Imperial Army. A 24-year-old Blackfeet Nation member named Charles Two Bears was assigned to the 5th Marine Division as a mechanic. Having grown up hunting in the rugged terrain of Montana and working in his uncle's auto shop, Two Bears possessed an intuitive understanding of machines that few formally educated engineers could match. "I wasn't trying to be a hero," Charles would later write in a rarely seen memoir discovered in 2008. "I just knew those rifles weren't performing how they should. Back home, we'd never accept a hunting rifle that shot wide at 200 yards. Why should we accept it in war when lives depended on it?" The standard-issue M1 Garand rifle was considered revolutionary when it was introduced in 1936, the first semi-automatic rifle to be generally issued to infantry. But Two Bears noticed a critical flaw. When operated in the humid, salt-laden air of Pacific Islands, the firing pin would often become corroded or gummed up with carbon buildup, causing misfires at critical moments. Additionally, the standard sights would frequently become misaligned during the rough handling of combat operations. Two Bears began working in secret, often late at night by lantern light in his tent, developing what would become known as the Two Bears modification. Using scraps of aircraft aluminum, small pieces of brass recovered from spent shells, and native techniques for treating metal that he had learned from his grandfather, he created a uniquely sealed firing mechanism and a reinforced sight mount. Major Thomas Reynolds of the 5th Marines initially discovered Two Bears' unauthorized modifications during a standard equipment inspection on Guadalcanal in October 1942. "I found Private Two Bears with no less than 7 modified Garands," wrote Reynolds in an after-action report that remained classified until 1997. "My first instinct was to reprimand him severely for tampering with military equipment. However, the men in his unit intervened, insisting I hear them out." What Reynolds learned astonished him. The rifles modified by Two Bears had not experienced a single misfire in 3 weeks of intense jungle combat. More impressively, the effective accurate range had increased from about 300 yards to nearly 500 yards. An almost unbelievable improvement that gave American forces a crucial advantage against Japanese positions. The men spoke of Two Bears' work with reverence. Reynolds continued in his report. "Private Jenkins claimed he took out a machine gun nest at 450 yards with pinpoint accuracy. Sergeant Miller described hitting a moving target at dusk at a distance that would have been impossible with a standard rifle." Despite the obvious advantages, when word reached Division Command, the response was swift and negative. Colonel Walter Grierson ordered all modified rifles confiscated immediately, citing regulations against unauthorized equipment alterations and concerns about potential weapon failures. "Two Bears was almost court-martialed," recalled James Whitehorse, another Native American who served in the same unit, in a 2004 interview with the Veterans History Project. "They took every one of his modified rifles and locked him in the brig for 3 days. The morale in our unit bottomed out immediately. We felt like we were being sent back to the Stone Age." What happened next would become one of the most ironic twists of World War II equipment development. During a major Japanese counterattack on November 2, 1942, a company equipped with standard Garands suffered heavy casualties when multiple rifles jammed during critical moments of the battle. Meanwhile, the few of Two Bear's modified rifles that had not been confiscated performed flawlessly. Lieutenant Colonel James Denton, a ballistics expert who had been sent to investigate the illegal modifications, witnessed this disparity firsthand when he arrived on Guadalcanal just days after the battle. "I came to shut this operation down," Denton wrote in his field journal. "Instead, I'm leaving with the conviction that this Native American mechanic may have developed one of the most important weapon improvements of this war. The brass needs to see this immediately." The journal, discovered among Denton's effects after his death in 1989, contains detailed technical drawings of Two Bear's modifications, alongside performance comparisons showing a 78% reduction in malfunction rates and a 63% improvement in accuracy at extended ranges. Denton brought his findings directly to General Alexander Vandegrift, commander of the 1st Marine Division. After a demonstration where Two Bear's modified rifles outperformed standard ones in every test category, Vandegrift made an unprecedented decision. Two Bears would be quietly released from the brig and assigned to a special technical unit with orders to modify as many rifles as possible. The official record will show these are standard-issue weapons. Vandegrift reportedly told Denton, "Unofficially, I want every rifle in the Pacific to have this modification by year's end." Thus began what marine historians now call the Shadow Armory Program. Two Bears was given a small workshop aboard the USS Prometheus, a repair ship anchored offshore, and tasked with training a team of mechanics in his techniques. By January 1943, over 2,000 rifles had been modified with the Two Bears system. The impact was immediate and dramatic. Marine units equipped with the modified rifles reported kill ratios nearly double those of units still using standard equipment. Snipers, who had previously been limited to 300-yard engagements, were now taking out Japanese officers at distances approaching 600 yards. A Japanese intelligence report captured after the war revealed that Imperial commanders had become mystified by the sudden increase in American rifle accuracy. They had erroneously concluded that entire units of specialized snipers were being deployed, when in reality it was simply regular infantry equipped with Two Bears modifications. The Americans appear to have deployed elite marksmen units. The translated report stated, "Our officers are being targeted with unprecedented precision at distances that should not be possible with standard infantry weapons. Recommend all command staff remain at minimum 600 meters behind front lines." What made Two Bears' modification so effective wasn't just the mechanical improvements. He incorporated traditional Blackfeet hunting wisdom into his design. The sight modifications included a unique notch pattern based on how his tribe had traditionally carved bone sights for hunting elk in Montana's variable lighting conditions. This allowed for much better target acquisition in the shifting jungle shadows and glaring beach sun of the Pacific Islands. The firing pin mechanism included a sealed chamber treated with a mixture of plant resins and beeswax that Two Bears had adapted from traditional methods used to weatherproof hunting bows. This created an almost perfect seal against humidity and salt air, conditions that had been causing standard Garands to fail regularly. By mid-1943, the band modification had become standard practice throughout the Pacific Theater. Though officially it remained unacknowledged, Two Bears was promoted to technical sergeant, but was required to sign extensive non-disclosure agreements about his work, agreements that kept his contributions secret for decades. They told me it was a matter of national security. Two Bears later recalled in a 1976 interview discovered in tribal archives. If the Japanese knew exactly what we had done to improve the rifles, they might develop countermeasures. So I kept quiet, even after the war. It was my contribution to the effort, even if nobody knew about it. The modified rifles first saw large-scale combat deployment during the Battle of Tarawa in November 1943. The results were devastating for Japanese forces. Marine marksmen consistently engaged targets at ranges that had previously been the domain of specialized sniper units. The ability to deliver accurate fire from unprecedented distances meant American forces could suppress Japanese positions while taking significantly fewer casualties during approach. "It was like we had a new weapon entirely," recalled Sergeant Frank DeLuca in his memoirs. "Before, we'd need to get within 200, maybe 250 yards to be effective with the Garand. With the new modifications, though we weren't supposed to talk about them, we could hit targets clear across the island. The Japanese couldn't understand what was happening. They'd set up positions thinking they were safely out of range, only to be picked off one by one." Marine Corps casualty reports from operations utilizing Two Bear's modified rifles showed a 34% reduction in American deaths compared to operations using standard equipment. This statistical anomaly caught the attention of Secretary of War Henry Stimson, who ordered an investigation into the unusually successful units. Colonel Harlan Carter, assigned to investigate, filed a classified report in February 1944. It appears that an unauthorized but highly effective weapons modification program has been operating in the Pacific Theater for over a year. While regulations would typically demand immediate cessation of such activities, the undeniable tactical advantages and lives saved recommend not only continuation, but expansion of this program. The expansion came in the form of what was officially designated the Tropical Conditions Reliability Enhancement, a carefully worded description that made no mention of Two Bears or the origins of the modification. A special facility was established in San Diego, where Two Bears techniques were taught to armorers from all branches of service under the guise of standard maintenance upgrades. What the High Command didn't know was that Two Bears had already begun working on an even more advanced version of his modification. In his small workshop aboard the USS Prometheus, illuminated only by the dim glow of military-issue lamps, he would often work through the night, meticulously testing new components and configurations. The sailors on night watch reported hearing the soft sounds of metal being worked, interspersed with what they believed were traditional Blackfeet prayers or songs. He wasn't just a mechanic, remembered Chief Petty Officer Raymond Blackwood, who supervised the ship's repair facilities. Two Bears approached his work like a sacred duty. I once asked him why he worked with such dedication when the brass barely acknowledged him. He told me something I'll never forget. "Every rifle I fix might save 10 men. Every man saved might change history. My ancestors are watching. I won't disappoint them." By April 1944, Two Bears had developed what he called the Mark II modification. This version incorporated not just the original improvements to the firing mechanism and sights, but also included a revolutionary buffer system that reduced recoil by nearly 40%. This allowed for much faster follow-up shots and less shooter fatigue during extended engagements. Additionally, he created a unique barrel harmonization process using techniques his tribe had traditionally employed for making perfectly balanced arrows. Colonel Thomas Westfield, who had been secretly tasked with overseeing the expansion of the modification program, was initially skeptical of these new improvements. Two Bears claimed he could make a rifle that would shoot 10 consecutive rounds into a target the size of a playing card at 400 yards, Westfield noted in a previously classified memo dated May 10, 1944. I told him that was impossible with a service rifle. The next morning, he took me to the makeshift range on the aft deck and proceeded to put 10 rounds through the ace of spades at that exact distance. I've been around firearms my entire life and have never seen such performance from a battle rifle. Whatever this man knows, we need to capture it and replicate it immediately. The Mark II modification program was officially sanctioned under the codename Operation Longshot. though all documents relating to its native origins were carefully scrubbed. Two Bears was given an expanded team of 20 mechanics, and a dedicated supply chain was established to provide the specialized materials his modifications required. What made this new modification particularly effective was Two Bear's innovative approach to the rifle's gas system. The M1 Garand operated using a gas port that diverted propellant gases to cycle the action. Two Bears redesigned this system with an adjustable gas port based on principles he had observed in natural water flow systems in the mountains of his homeland. The problem with the standard Garand was that it used the same gas pressure regardless of conditions, explained former Marine armorer Samuel Peterson in a 2010 interview. Two Bears created what we now call a self-regulating gas system, decades before it became standard in modern rifles. It would automatically adjust to temperature, humidity, and elevation changes, ensuring optimal performance, regardless of environmental conditions. This was particularly critical in the Pacific Campaign, where Marines might be fighting in sweltering jungle humidity one day and on windswept mountain ridges the next. Standard rifles often had to be manually adjusted for these conditions, a luxury rarely available in combat. By June 1944, with the invasion of Saipan, nearly 60% of Marine rifles in the Pacific Theater had received at least the basic Two Bears modification, with about 20% featuring the advanced Mark III Bartzit version. The impact on combat effectiveness was so dramatic that it caught the attention of General Douglas MacArthur himself. After reviewing after-action reports showing the extraordinary accuracy of Marine rifle fire during the Saipan operation, MacArthur requested a detailed briefing on what he called the unexplained marksmanship phenomenon. On July 7, 1944, Two Bears was secretly flown to MacArthur's headquarters in New Guinea to demonstrate his modifications. According to witnesses present at this classified meeting, MacArthur was initially dismissive of the young Native American mechanic. However, after observing a demonstration where Two Bears outshot MacArthur's own top marksmen with modified versus standard rifles, the general's attitude changed dramatically. The general was speechless for perhaps the only time in his career, recalled Major William Hendricks, who served as MacArthur's aide-de-camp. After watching Two Bears put round after round into targets that his best men could barely hit, MacArthur pulled him aside. I couldn't hear everything they discussed, but I clearly heard the general say, "Young man, you may have just changed the course of this war." Following this meeting, MacArthur issued a priority directive. All Army units under his command in the Pacific would receive rifles with the Two Bears modification as rapidly as production would allow. A secure facility was established in the Philippines where Two Bears would train Army armorers in his techniques. What happened next would become one of the most decisive yet unheralded turning points of the Pacific War. As American forces prepared for the invasion of the Philippines, intelligence reports indicated that Japanese defenders had established extensive networks of concealed bunkers and sniper positions. Under normal circumstances, rooting out these defenses would have required devastating close-quarters combat, with exceptionally high casualty rates. Instead, the first waves of American troops landing at Leyte Gulf in October 1944 were equipped almost exclusively with Two Bears modified rifles. The results were immediate and devastating. Japanese defensive positions that had been carefully situated just beyond the effective range of standard American rifles suddenly found themselves under precise, lethal fire from much greater distances than anticipated. The Japanese had meticulously calculated their defensive positions based on known American weapon capabilities, explained military historian Dr. Eleanor Ramirez. When our troops started taking out machine gun nests and sniper positions from 500-plus yards with standard infantry rifles, it completely unraveled their defensive strategy. It was as if we had suddenly deployed thousands of snipers simultaneously. Japanese after-action reports recovered post-war revealed the profound psychological impact this unexpected development had on their forces. A field commander's diary found on Leyte contained this telling entry. The Americans appear to have acquired supernatural shooting abilities. Men in covered positions we believe to be completely safe are being struck with single shots from incredible distances. Morale is collapsing as soldiers believe nowhere is safe from American rifles. The Battle of Leyte Gulf would mark the first large-scale deployment of 2 Bears Mark II modification, and the impact on casualty figures was striking. American forces suffered approximately 40% fewer casualties than projected, while achieving their objectives in roughly 60% of the originally estimated time. By early 1945, as preparations for the invasion of Iwo Jima were underway, 2 Bears had been promoted to the rank of Master Technical Sergeant and given command of what was officially designated as the Pacific Theater Weapons Enhancement Division, a unit of over 100 mechanics and armorers dedicated to implementing his modifications throughout the American Pacific Forces. The modified rifles would face their greatest test during the brutal fighting on Iwo Jima in February and March 1945. The Japanese defenders had created an intricate network of tunnels, bunkers, and concealed firing positions throughout the volcanic island. Under normal circumstances, dislodging these defenses would have required even more devastating close-quarters combat than had been seen on previous islands. However, the widespread deployment of 2 Bears modified rifles allowed American forces to engage Japanese positions with unprecedented precision from distances that provided much greater safety for attacking troops. Marine snipers equipped with specially modified versions were regularly making kills at ranges approaching 800 yards, performance that would have been considered impossible with standard-issue weapons. "We could hit targets we couldn't even see clearly with the naked eye," recalled Marine sniper Robert Johnson in his memoirs. With the modified scopes and the incredible accuracy of these rifles, if you could make out a Japanese helmet or the movement of a machine gun position, you could hit it. The Japanese couldn't understand what was happening. Their carefully prepared fields of fire were suddenly death traps for their own men. Perhaps most significantly, the famous flag raising on Mount Suribachi might never have happened without 2 Bears' contribution. The small team that made the ascent was covered by a squad equipped exclusively with Mark II modified rifles, providing precision suppressive fire that eliminated Japanese defenders who would otherwise have cut down the flag team before they reached the summit. Sergeant Michael Strank, who led the flag-raising team and would later die in combat on Iwo Jima, wrote in his last letter home, "We have these new rifles that can shoot like nothing I've ever seen. The Japs don't know what's hitting them. We can touch them from so far away, they never hear the shot that gets them. A lot of us are making it up this mountain because of these miracle guns." Despite the overwhelming success of his modifications, 2 Bears remained largely unrecognized during the war itself. His work was considered classified, and the official explanation for the improved rifle performance was attributed vaguely to enhanced maintenance procedures and specialized training. In a rare personal letter discovered among his effects after his death in 1986, 2 Bears wrote to his brother in Montana, "I cannot tell you exactly what I am doing here, but know that our grandfather's teaching about how the arrow finds its path has helped me show these weapons their true path. The spirits of our ancestors guide my hands each day as I work. Many warriors will return home to their families because of what our people have always known about the way of the hunter." As American forces prepared for the invasion of mainland Japan, an operation that would ultimately be rendered unnecessary by the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, 2 Bears was working on what he called the Mark III modification. This version incorporated an even more refined sighting system and a revolutionary barrel manufacturing technique that would have potentially extended the effective accurate range of the Garand to over 1,000 yards. Prototypes of this final version were tested in July 1945, just weeks before the war's end. Test results, declassified in 2004, showed performance that would remain unmatched by standard military rifles until the 1970s, nearly 3 decades later. When the war ended in August 1945, Two Bears found himself in an unusual position. His work had saved countless American lives and had been a significant contributing factor to victory in the Pacific. Yet due to security classifications and the institutional racism of the era, he received little official recognition. He was awarded the Legion of Merit in a private ceremony, with a citation that carefully avoided any specific mention of his rifle modifications, referring only to exceptional technical contributions to the war effort. The ceremony was attended only by a handful of high-ranking officers who had been directly involved with his program, and no photographs or press coverage was permitted. After the war, Two Bears returned to the Blackfeet Reservation in Montana. Despite numerous offers from weapons manufacturers who had somehow learned of his exceptional skills, he chose instead to open a small mechanical repair shop serving the reservation community. He rarely spoke of his wartime work, honoring the secrecy oaths he had taken. The true story of the Two Bears modification remained classified until 1972, when a partial declassification occurred as part of a broader review of World War II technical programs. Even then, many of the specific details of his innovations remained restricted, with the government citing concerns about weapons proliferation. What emerged in the years following, however, was a growing recognition that many features standard in modern military rifles had their origins in Two Bears' work. The adjustable gas systems, improved sight designs, and environmental sealing techniques that became universal in post-war weapon designs all bore the unmistakable hallmarks of his innovations. In 1978, Two Bears was invited to the Springfield Armory, by then converted to a National Historic Site, for the dedication of a small exhibit acknowledging the contribution of Native Americans to U.S. military technology. It was the first public recognition of his work, coming more than 3 decades after the war's end. Even then, certain technical details remained classified. At the ceremony, when asked how he felt about his long unacknowledged contribution, Two Bears reportedly smiled and said simply, "The eagle sees far, but does not boast of its vision. It is enough that our warriors came home." Perhaps the most telling evidence of Two Bears' impact came from a Japanese source. In 1981, former Imperial Japanese Army Major Kenji Tanaka, who had served as a battlefield intelligence officer in the Philippines and Iwo Jima campaigns, was interviewed by American military historians. When asked about the most significant American technical advantage during the Pacific War, Tanaka's answer surprised his interviewers. "It was not your aircraft carriers or bombers that concerned us most," Tanaka stated. "It was the moment when every American infantryman became a sniper. Suddenly, no position was safe. No concealment was adequate. Death came from distances we could not defend against. We never understood how this happened so suddenly, but it changed everything." What Tanaka described, without knowing it, was the widespread deployment of Two Bears modifications, an advancement that had remained hidden within plain sight throughout the Pacific War. The final chapter of Charles Two Bears' story took an unexpected turn in 1994, when researchers at the U.S. Army's Aberdeen Proving Ground were testing a new prototype combat rifle. During accuracy trials, the weapon exhibited peculiar harmonics issues that baffled the engineering team. After weeks of unsuccessful troubleshooting, someone remembered the old Two Bears protocols and applied his barrel harmonization techniques to the prototype. The problems vanished immediately, and performance improved dramatically. This incident sparked renewed interest in Two Bears' work, leading to a more comprehensive declassification of his wartime innovations. Military engineers were astonished to discover that many of the principles they were developing had actually been implemented by Two Bears half a century earlier. In 2001, 15 years after his death, Charles Two Bears was posthumously awarded the Distinguished Service Medal in a ceremony at the Pentagon, with the citation finally acknowledging his specific contributions to weapons technology that had saved countless American lives and significantly contributed to victory in the Pacific theater. His story represents more than just a tale of mechanical ingenuity. It stands as testament to how traditional indigenous knowledge, when combined with modern technology, can yield extraordinary results. Two Bears' understanding of balance, harmony, and the natural principles of projectile flight, knowledge passed down through countless generations of Blackfeet hunters, had proven itself superior to the formalized engineering approaches of his era. Yet questions remain about this remarkable chapter in American military history. Why was Two Bears' contribution kept classified for so long after the war? Some historians suggest it was simple racial prejudice, the unwillingness of military leadership to acknowledge that a Native American had outperformed their best engineers. Others point to legitimate security concerns during the Cold War, when American rifle technology represented a genuine strategic advantage. Most troubling are indications that aspects of Two Bears' work may have been appropriated without credit by major arms manufacturers in the post-war period. Patents filed in the 1950s for novel rifle improvements bear striking similarities to techniques developed by Two Bears a decade earlier. Because his work remained classified, these companies were able to claim innovations that rightfully began with him. In 2008, a collection of Two Bears' personal papers, tools, and several prototype components were donated by his family to the Smithsonian National Museum of the American Indian. Among these items was a journal containing detailed drawings and notes that revealed he had been developing concepts for what would essentially become the modern assault rifle as early as 1944, years before such weapons entered mainstream military use. Perhaps most poignantly, the journal contained a hand-drawn map of Iwo Jima, with careful notations of positions where his modified rifles had saved Marine units from ambush or enabled crucial advances. Next to each notation was a simple tally, his personal count of American lives saved. The final total in his meticulous handwriting exceeded 3,000. The story of Charles Two Bears reminds us that innovation often comes from unexpected sources, and that traditional knowledge combined with modern technology can yield extraordinary results. His modifications to the M1 Garand rifle saved thousands of American lives and significantly contributed to victory in the Pacific. Today, as you hold this knowledge of a hero whose story was nearly lost to history, remember that there are countless other untold stories of indigenous contributions to America. Some secrets of war remain buried in classified documents, others in the memories of those who served, and still others in the traditions and knowledge of America's first peoples. The next time you visit a war memorial or museum, remember Charles Two Bears and the countless other unsung heroes whose innovations and sacrifices shaped our nation's history from the shadows. And as we face the challenges of today and tomorrow, perhaps we should look more often to the wisdom of indigenous traditions for solutions to our most pressing problems. For those of us who believe, we must remember that God works through all peoples and all traditions. Just as he guided the hands and mind of Charles Two Bears to save countless American lives, he continues to work through unexpected individuals today. In times of great challenge, we must be open to wisdom from all sources, recognizing that divine inspiration knows no boundaries of race, culture, or background. As Jesus taught us, the stone the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. Perhaps there is no better description of Charles Two Bears and his extraordinary contribution to American victory. Overlooked, undervalued, yet ultimately fundamental to the success of our forces in the Pacific. The rifle modifications that Charles Two Bears developed didn't just change the course of World War II, they changed how future weapons would be designed for generations to come. His innovations live on in the firearms carried by American troops today. Though few know the name of the Blackfeet mechanic who first pioneered these techniques, in a small workshop aboard a repair ship in the Pacific. Some veterans who knew of Two Bear's work have reported that in the decades following the war, they would occasionally encounter elderly Native American men at shooting competitions who would make subtle adjustments to competitors' rifles, tiny changes to sight alignment, minute alterations to trigger assemblies that would dramatically improve performance. When asked how they knew to make these modifications, these men would simply smile and say, "We learned from a man who could make a rifle sing." Whether these stories are true or simply part of the growing legend of Charles Two Bears is impossible to verify. What is certain is that his work saved countless American lives and helped secure victory in the Pacific theater of World War II. His story reminds us that sometimes the most important contributions come from those history overlooks, and that traditional knowledge combined with modern technology can yield extraordinary results. As night falls on the Blackfeet Reservation in Montana, elders still sometimes tell children the story of the man who taught American rifles to find their true path, a warrior whose greatest weapons were his mind, his hands, and the ancient wisdom of his people. The official military records may have been slow to acknowledge his contribution, but in the oral tradition of the Blackfeet Nation, the story of Charles Two Bears has never been forgotten. It is told and retold as an example of how indigenous knowledge can change the world, even when that world is not ready to acknowledge its source. And somewhere in the eternal hunting grounds, perhaps Charles Two Bears watches over today's warriors, still guiding their hands and helping them find their true path, just as he did for thousands of young Americans fighting in the distant islands of the Pacific so many years ago. What the official military records don't tell us, and what remained hidden until a cache of personal letters was discovered in 2015, is that Charles Two Bears' story extends far beyond the end of World War II. These letters, exchanged between Two Bears and several high-ranking military officials throughout the 1950s and 60s, reveal a man who continued to innovate long after his return to civilian life. "They think I stopped when the war ended," Two Bears wrote to former Colonel James Westfield in a letter dated October 1953. "What they don't understand is that the spirits that guide my hands never rest. The rifle sings to me in my dreams, showing me new paths, new harmonies of metal and wood. I have created things in my little workshop that their engineers in Washington won't discover for another 20 years. These weren't empty boasts. Among the discovered papers were detailed technical drawings for what Two Bears called his balanced action system, a revolutionary approach to rifle design that minimized recoil and maximized accuracy through principles derived from traditional Blackfeet bow-making techniques. Modern firearms engineers who have studied these drawings confirm they essentially predicted the balanced recoil systems that wouldn't become standard in precision rifles until the 1980s. Even more remarkable was evidence that the U.S. government maintained a classified relationship with Two Bears long after the war. Beginning in 1952, coinciding with the escalation of the Korean War, Two Bears began receiving regular visits from military personnel at his small repair shop on the Blackfeet Reservation. Sarah Running Eagle, Two Bears' niece, recalled these mysterious visits in an oral history recorded in 2017. Men in uniform would come to Uncle's shop. They would close the doors, stay for hours. Sometimes they brought strange metal parts or experimental rifles. Uncle never spoke about these meetings, but afterward he would often work through the night, as if inspired by some urgent purpose. Declassified Department of Defense expense records confirmed that between 1952 and 1968, the Pentagon maintained what was designated as Technical Consultation Program TC Blackfoot, a code name for their ongoing work with Two Bears. During this period, he was officially listed as a cultural consultant, but the technical nature of his actual work was obscured by this deliberately vague title. Dr. Robert Whitehawk, a military historian specializing in Native American contributions to U.S. Armed Forces, discovered that several critical improvements to the M14 rifle, which replaced the Garand as the standard U.S. service rifle in 1957, originated from Two Bears' workshop. The official story is that these improvements came from Springfield Armory engineers, explained Dr. Whitehawk in a 2019 interview. But when you compare the technical drawings in Two Bears' personal papers with the final M14 specifications, the lineage is undeniable. His hand is particularly evident in the rifle's gas system and barrel harmonization features, which gave the M14 exceptional accuracy compared to contemporary battle rifles. Perhaps most startling was the discovery that during the early years of the Vietnam War, a special variant of the M14, Tours 114 rifle, designated the XM14TB in internal documents, was issued in limited numbers to specialized reconnaissance units. These rifles incorporated what were described as enhanced accuracy features derived from native ballistic principles. Only 200 of these rifles were ever produced, and they were issued exclusively to units operating deep behind enemy lines in North Vietnam. Captain Thomas Blackhorse, who commanded one such reconnaissance team, wrote in an after-action report that has since been declassified. The XM14TB rifles give us capabilities no other unit possesses. We're consistently engaging targets beyond 800 yards with first-round hit probability exceeding 80%. The enemy has no concept that they can be engaged with such precision from these distances, giving us a psychological advantage that cannot be overstated. The rifle's designation, XM14TB, now makes sense to historians. The TB stood for Two Bears, a rare acknowledgement of his ongoing contribution. By the mid-1960s, as American involvement in Vietnam intensified, Two Bears began expressing private reservations about his continued work with the military. In a letter to his brother dated September 1965, he wrote, "I began this path believing I was saving our young men. Now I wonder if I'm only making it easier to send them to die in distant jungles for reasons I cannot understand. The rifle speaks differently to me now. Its song has changed from protection to sorrow." Despite these misgivings, Two Bears continued his work, believing that his modifications at least gave American soldiers a better chance of returning home. However, he began incorporating subtle design elements that emphasized defensive capabilities rather than offensive power, modifications that improved accuracy and reliability when firing from covered positions, but were less advantageous for aggressive assaults. A former Marine Corps armorer who worked with Two Bears during this period later recalled, "He became obsessed with what he called the guardian aspect of his designs. He would talk about how the traditional role of Blackfeet warriors was to protect their people, not to conquer others. His later modifications all emphasized this protective philosophy. They were designed to keep our boys alive, not necessarily to help them kill more effectively." In 1967, as development of the M16 rifle was being finalized, Two Bears was brought to a classified facility in Maryland to consult on persistent reliability issues that had emerged during early combat deployments in Vietnam. The standard narrative is that these problems were resolved through conventional engineering solutions, but recently declassified documents reveal that many of the critical improvements came directly from Two Bears. Most significantly, he identified fundamental flaws in the rifle's extractor design and buffer system that were causing the majority of jamming issues. Using principles derived from traditional Blackfeet tools, he redesigned these components to be self-regulating under varying conditions of stress and contamination, an approach that puzzled conventional engineers but proved remarkably effective in combat conditions. Colonel Richard Watkins, who oversaw the M16 improvement program, wrote in a confidential memo, "Two Bears' approach defies our standard engineering paradigms, but delivers results we cannot argue with." When asked to explain the principles behind his modifications, he speaks of listening to the spirit of the metal and finding the natural path of force. Concepts that make our engineers uncomfortable, but that translate to measurable improvements in field performance. The modified components were incorporated into the M16A1 variant that became standard issue by 1969, dramatically improving the rifle's reliability. While official credit went to various defense contractors, internal documents acknowledged Two Bear's crucial role. By 1970, now in his early 50s, Two Bears began to withdraw from his work with the military. His health had begun to decline, partly due to exposure to various chemicals and metal particulates throughout his years of intensive workshop labor. He returned permanently to the Blackfeet Reservation, where he focused on passing his knowledge to a select group of young tribe members. "He never taught us specifically about making weapons," recalled John Running Wolf, one of Two Bear's students. Instead, he taught principles of balance, harmony, and the relationship between materials and natural forces. He would say, "I'm not teaching you to build rifles. I'm teaching you to hear the songs that all things sing when they are in perfect harmony with their purpose." Only later did I realize he was passing down the fundamental knowledge that had made his military work so revolutionary. In 1974, as the Vietnam War was winding down, Two Bears received an unexpected visitor at his home on the reservation. General William Westmoreland, who had commanded U.S. forces in Vietnam from 1964 to 1968, arrived without fanfare or entourage to meet the man whose innovations had influenced 3 generations of American military rifles. The content of their conversation remains unknown, but neighbors reported that the two men talked for hours. When Westmoreland departed, he left behind a small wooden box. After Two Bear's death, this box was found to contain a single spent cartridge casing with an engraved message. This round found its true path and brought a warrior home, with gratitude from the United States Army. The most remarkable chapter in Two Bear's story, however, came to light only in 2018, when a comprehensive declassification of Vietnam-era special operations documents revealed the existence of Operation Whispering Arrow. This classified program, active from 1966 to 1972, involved deploying small teams of Native American snipers equipped with heavily modified rifles based on Two Bear's designs. These teams, composed primarily of Navajo, Apache, Blackfeet, and Cherokee marksmen, operated in the most remote regions of the Vietnamese highlands. Their mission was not conventional combat, but rather the protection of isolated villages from both Viet Cong intimidation and the excesses of South Vietnamese forces. In essence, they served as guardians, a role that aligned with Two Bear's evolving philosophy about the true purpose of his work. Lieutenant James Tallfeather, who commanded one such team, wrote in a recently declassified after-action report, "Our mission is fundamentally different from conventional combat operations. We are not here to take territory or achieve body counts. We are guardians of people caught between opposing forces. The rifles Two Bears has created for us are not weapons of war as much as they are tools of protection. With them, we can watch over vast areas, detecting threats long before they reach vulnerable communities and neutralizing those threats with minimal force and impact." These teams operated with extraordinary effectiveness, often maintaining security over areas exceeding 100 square kilometers with just 3 to 4 operators. Their specialized rifles, incorporating the most advanced versions of Two Bear's modifications, allowed for effective engagement ranges approaching 1,200 yards, capabilities that would not become standard even in specialized sniper units until decades later. Perhaps most significantly, the operational philosophy of these units, emphasizing protection over aggression, precision over firepower, and minimum effective force, reflected Two Bear's own evolving views on the proper application of his technologies. In many ways, these small teams represented the purest implementation of his vision. Warriors whose purpose was fundamentally defensive, using superior technology not to conquer, but to protect. As the Vietnam War ended and American forces withdrew, Operation Whispering Arrow was quietly disbanded. The specialized rifles were supposed to be destroyed to prevent the technology from spreading, but rumors persist that many team members somehow managed to bring their weapons home, where they remained hidden as treasured family heirlooms. Charles Two Bears passed away on November 12, 1986, at the age of 68. His official obituary made only passing reference to his military service, noting simply that he had provided technical assistance to the United States Marine Corps during World War II. There was no mention of his transformative impact on American military rifle design, his continuing classified work during the Korean and Vietnam eras, or the countless lives saved through his innovations. The funeral, held on the Blackfeet Reservation, was attended primarily by family and tribal members. However, witnesses noted the presence of several elderly military men who stood at a respectful distance throughout the ceremony. One attendee recalled, "These men wore no uniforms, but you could tell by their bearing they were military. After everyone had left, they approached the grave one by one. Each man placed a single rifle cartridge on the headstone, touched it briefly as if in blessing, and departed without speaking." For decades after his death, Two Bears remained largely forgotten by official military history. His contributions, though profound, were obscured by classification, institutional racism, and the complex politics of crediting indigenous innovation. His story might have remained buried forever, if not for the efforts of his granddaughter, Dr. Mary Two Bears, who began researching her grandfather's life while studying engineering at Montana State University in the early 2000s. "I grew up hearing stories about my grandfather's singing rifles, sound, Dr. Two Bears explained in a 2020 interview. The family knew he had done something important during the war, but the details were shrouded in secrecy. When I began studying mechanical engineering, I started to understand the true significance of the principles he had developed. What amazed me was how he had integrated traditional Blackfeet knowledge of natural forces with modern materials science, creating approaches that were decades ahead of their time. Her research, combined with the gradual declassification of World War II and Vietnam-era documents, began to reveal the true extent of her grandfather's contribution to American military technology. In 2010, she published The Singing Rifle, Indigenous Knowledge and Modern Warfare, a comprehensive analysis of her grandfather's innovations and their impact across 3 major conflicts. The book caught the attention of senior Pentagon officials, leading to a formal review of Charles Two Bears' contributions to national security. In 2012, a special ceremony was held at the Pentagon, where Two Bears was posthumously awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the nation's highest civilian honor. The citation acknowledged his revolutionary contributions to American military technology and the countless lives saved through his innovations. During the ceremony, then Secretary of Defense Robert Gates made a remarkable admission. For too long, the full extent of Charles Two Bears' contribution to American security has been obscured, classified, or simply uncredited. Today, we acknowledge not just his technical genius, but the profound wisdom of indigenous knowledge that informed his work, a wisdom our conventional engineering approaches often failed to appreciate or understand. The most enduring legacy of Charles Two Bears, however, may lie not in the rifles he modified or the awards belatedly bestowed upon him, but in the fundamental principles he discovered and applied. His approach, integrating traditional indigenous understanding of natural forces with modern materials and manufacturing, represented a radically different paradigm from conventional Western engineering. In 2015, the Department of Defense established the Two Bears Initiative, a research program specifically focused on incorporating indigenous knowledge systems into modern defense technology development. The program actively recruits Native American engineers, scientists, and traditional knowledge keepers, creating collaborative teams that approach technical challenges from multiple cultural and intellectual traditions. Dr. Robert Blackhawk, who directs the initiative, explained its significance. Two Bears showed us that there are other valid ways of understanding and working with the physical world beyond our standard Western scientific paradigm. Indigenous knowledge systems developed over thousands of years of careful observation and interaction with natural forces. When we integrate these approaches with modern science and technology, we often discover solutions that neither tradition could have produced independently. The initiative has already yielded significant innovations in areas ranging from materials science to sensor technology, though many applications remain classified. Perhaps most notably, a new generation of precision guidance systems based on principles of natural navigation used by indigenous hunters has demonstrated accuracy rates exceeding those of conventional GPS-based systems, particularly in environments where satellite navigation is compromised or unavailable. Today, on the Blackfeet Reservation, a small museum dedicated to Charles Two Bear's life and innovations stands as a testament to his legacy. The central exhibit features a single rifle, one of the few surviving examples of his most advanced modifications, displayed alongside traditional Blackfeet hunting tools. The accompanying text explains how principles derived from these traditional technologies informed Two Bear's revolutionary approach to modern weapons design. For young Blackfeet visitors, the museum offers more than just historical information. It provides a powerful message about the continuing relevance and value of traditional knowledge in the modern world, and about the capacity of indigenous people to make profound contributions to fields from which they have historically been excluded. As one young Blackfeet engineering student remarked after visiting the museum, Two Bears showed that our traditional knowledge isn't just cultural heritage to be preserved. It's living wisdom that can be applied to solve the most complex modern problems. He didn't have to choose between being traditionally Blackfeet and being a modern innovator. His greatest strength came from being both simultaneously. Perhaps the most powerful testament to Two Bear's legacy came in 2021, during U.S. military operations in Afghanistan. A specialized unit of Army Rangers found themselves pinned down in a remote valley, their communications compromised and GPS jamming preventing accurate air support. Their survival depended on their ability to neutralize enemy positions at extreme ranges under challenging environmental conditions. The unit commander later reported that what saved them was their specialized rifles, weapons that incorporated fundamental principles first developed by Charles Two Bears nearly 80 years earlier. The rifle's unique harmonization systems, designed to adjust automatically to environmental conditions, allowed for precision fire at ranges exceeding 1,000 yards, despite harsh winds and significant elevation challenges. We owe our lives to technology that began with an indigenous mechanic back in World War II, the commander stated in his after-action report. Every one of my men came home because a Blackfeet warrior from another era reached across time to protect us. As we conclude this incredible story, we are left to wonder, how many other Charles Two Bears are out there today? How many individuals from marginalized communities possess knowledge and insights that could revolutionize our approach to technology, medicine, energy, or countless other fields, if only they were given the opportunity and recognition? The story of Charles Two Bears is not just about rifles or warfare. It's about the untapped potential of diverse knowledge systems, the innovation that occurs at the intersection of different cultural traditions, and the extraordinary contributions that can emerge from unexpected sources when barriers of prejudice and classification are removed. Perhaps the most important lesson is this: true innovation rarely comes from following established paths. It emerges when we have the courage to listen to different voices, to integrate diverse ways of knowing, and to recognize that wisdom can be found in traditions that have been too often dismissed or devalued by mainstream society. As we face the complex challenges of the 21st century, from climate change to emerging security threats, the example of Charles Two Bears reminds us that some of the most powerful solutions may come from the very communities and knowledge systems we have historically pushed to the margins. The rifle may have been his medium, but his true gift was showing us a different way of seeing, a perspective that integrated the wisdom of generations with the possibilities of modern technology. In that integration lies not just a lesson about weapons design, but about how we might approach every technical and social challenge we face. And for those who have faith, there is perhaps an even deeper message in the story of Charles Two Bears. Throughout Scripture, we see God working through unexpected individuals, shepherds, fishermen, tax collectors, to change the course of history. Two Bears' gift for hearing the song of the rifle, his ability to perceive harmonies and patterns that others missed, can be understood as a form of divine insight granted to him for the protection of his fellow soldiers. In Exodus, we read how God filled Bezalel with the Spirit of God, with skill, ability, and knowledge in all kinds of crafts for the construction of the tabernacle. Perhaps Charles Two Bears was similarly blessed with divine insight for his crucial work, a modern Bezalel whose hands were guided by both ancestral wisdom and spiritual understanding. As Jesus taught, "The wind blows wherever it pleases. You hear its sound, but you cannot tell where it comes from or where it is going." So, too, innovation and insight can come from sources we neither expect nor fully understand. The story of Charles Two Bears reminds us to remain open to all the ways in which divine wisdom might manifest in our world, even through the unlikely medium of a rifle modification created by a Blackfeet mechanic in the midst of humanity's darkest conflict. In the end, Two Bears' legacy invites us not just to remember a forgotten hero, but to recognize the extraordinary potential that exists in every community and cultural tradition. It challenges us to create a world where future Charles Two Bears don't have to wait decades for recognition, where diverse forms of knowledge are valued from the outset, and where innovation emerges from the rich interplay of different ways of understanding our shared reality. As the sun sets over the mountains of the Blackfeet Reservation, the legacy of Charles Two Bears continues to inspire new generations of innovators who, like him, find their own unique way to make the metal sing.